Hi, bit of a gap since my last YouTube video, and I'm here to catch up now and tell you what's been going on. Ezra's going to help me with these, so obviously they're going to be much better videos. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my new writing room and where I'm going to be in Hereford instead of Wales. We'll have a recap. There's the paperback edition of The Little Shop of Found Things coming out any minute. And I'm going to do a short reading of the new book, Secrets of the Chocolate House, which is coming out on the 22nd of October. So stick around because in a minute we'll get right onto that. This extract is taken from the part in the book where Xanthi first goes back in time. So as we know, this is a time travelling series, and in book 2 of the Found Things series, Secrets of the Chocolate House picks up the story pretty much where it left off, and this comes on about page 50 or 60 or so of the book, and it is where she first travels back through time, and this is what she finds when she gets there. So these are the moments when she wakes up, if you like, where she has travelled to and what she finds. Okay. Xanthi opened her eyes. She was aware she was lying on hard stone floor, somewhere cold and enclosed. It was so dark that she could just make out solid bare walls around her. With mounting dread, she attempted to make sense of her surroundings, pushing herself up onto one elbow. For a moment she feared she'd arrived in a jail or a dungeon. How would she explain her sudden appearance to an incredulous jailer? Had she made the enormous leap through time successfully, only to find herself trapped, with no one to help her, unable to save herself, let alone Samuel? Through the fabric of her blouse she checked that her gold locket was still in place. Feeling the smooth bump of it against her skin reassured her. Whatever else she could or couldn't do, as long as she had her mother's special gift, she could return home. Taking a deep breath to steady herself, Xanthi smelled not the musty dampness of a cell, but the sweetness of apples and pears. She could taste the acidic blend of fruit in the chilly air. Above this there was the faint tang of onions and the dry, warm earthiness of Hessian sacks of flour and wheat. A storeroom, then. A basement hoard house. She recalled that when the chatelaine had drawn her back through town, it had always taken her to a place where there was something she needed to see, something connected to its story, some clue or revelation. She got to her feet, her eyes at last adjusting to the gloom. There was a slender, glassless window high up, which let in some daylight, and she could see now that the space was orderly and well kept, free from cobwebs or dust. Turning, she saw a steep flight of wooden steps leading up to a heavy door with light showing at its edges. As she climbed the steps, she could hear the murmur of voices above. She leaned against the worn wood, listening. It was hard to make out words. The sound was more of a room full of people, some laughing, their occasional louder outbursts, much general chatter, not one distinct voice. She lifted the heavy iron latch and pushed the door open a little. The room was low-ceilinged, with heavy beams and filled with rustic wooden furniture, tables, benches and high-backed settles. A pungent fug of smoke hung in the room, supplied in part by the large, open fire in the deep-set hearth, as well as by the many pipes that were being puffed upon, sucked or chewed. For a moment Xanthi thought she had arrived at an inn, but then the truth struck her. It was so obvious she felt foolish for not working it out sooner. She was in a chocolate house. She stepped silently through the door, closing it behind her. She wanted to scan the room for any familiar faces. If she was close to where Samuel lived, she might well see someone she had met on an earlier visit. But it was difficult trying to peer through the low light and smoky atmosphere of the space to study people without herself being seen. As she began to move cautiously around the room, keeping to the shadows and avoiding meeting the eye of any of the patrons, something struck her as odd. While the place had all the appearance of an inn, it smelled different. Here was not the aroma of whisky or sour ale, nor the whiff of vinegary wine. There was none of the ribald coarseness she might have expected in a tavern, nor any drunken brawling or rowdy behaviour. Instead, there was an intensity to the discussions and conversation around her, almost a secrecy to the way the patrons huddled in small groups, deeply engaged in their talk. A tall, skinny lad darted between tables, delivering trays of cups and pots of chocolate. Xanthi sniffed. She could detect spices, cinnamon mostly, she thought, perhaps also nutmeg and ginger. Looking more closely now, she could see that there were copper pots and ceramic ones too, some on the tables, some others at the counter which ran across the far end of the room, close to the door. Behind the counter was an elegant if aged woman who appeared to be in charge. She stood straight-backed, keenly observing all that was going on in her establishment, occasionally issuing orders to the boy who ferried trays and pots back and forth, sometimes taking money from a customer or engaging them in conversation. Even at first glance, Xanthi felt there was something about this woman, something singular, beyond her faded beauty and regal demeanour. At that moment the woman turned and picked up a copper pot, swirling it by the wooden handle, before expertly pouring a cup of velvety hot chocolate into a fine china cup. With a start, she recognised that this was the chocolate pot, her chocolate pot. It looked younger, of course, less worn and a little shinier, but it was unmistakably the same one. Xanthi could even hear the high-pitched note of its song as it called to her. It had the same distinctive curve to the spout, the same dark brown wooden handle. She was uncertain of what to do next. Clearly this was where the pot had its origins. Its story was to be found here, and no doubt the owner of the chocolate house would have a part to play. But what of Samuel? So, in other news, as I say, the paperback of The Little Shop of Found Things is due out next week, the first week of October. Should be available widely. So if you are a paperback reader, then look out for that. In the back of it, there will be an extract from the very beginning of the second book, Secrets of the Chocolate House, so you get a little sneak preview of that. I'm really happy with the way this has come out, and I'm so glad to be sharing the second instalment of the story with you. You may be interested to know I am actually now writing the third instalment, but more of that later. As I said, we've moved house, so I'm going to put some photographs on here so you can see the more of the house. It's a work in progress. When we moved in, the house, which is about 120, 130 years old, it had been bedsits or small apartments for a number of years, and so we have been pulling it to pieces and putting it back together again to make it into a family home. And sadly, my writing room, which is right at the top of the house, is going to be the last thing to be fixed. So at the moment, Ezra and I and the cats usually are up here surrounded by boxes, but I have my desk and my writing chair and my computers. That's all I need. I'm lucky to have a nice view from my window. Hereford is a really lovely old market town. It is actually a city, but it's a very small city. It's got a lovely river running through it, and we're delighted with the place we found to live. We really like it here. And I'll share some of that with you as we explore our surroundings and as the house gets done. So meantime, when I'm not doing things to the house, I will be writing book 3 in the Found Things series. Have a listen to the extract. Tell me what you think. If you've got any questions about the series or the books coming up, put them in the comments below. And I will be doing a giveaway, so watch out for that. It'll probably be in the next video, and it will be for possibly some paperbacks. And definitely some hardback editions of the new book, so that's pretty difficult to get hold of at the moment. So keep an eye out for those, and in the meantime, happy reading. And I'm sorry, I don't know where I'm looking. Using a new system here, so if I'm making you cross-eyed, I really apologise. But we will improve. Ezra and I will get our act together and improve on the videos as we go along. So, as I say, happy reading in the meantime.